What is going on, FA Nation? My name is Justin Fensterman, along with my buddy Joey Fantasy Alarm. Oh, Joey, what's going on? How are you?
How you doing, Fensty? How you doing? In the process of building a new studio here for the Fantasy Alarm team. I'm rocking my hat. I'm rocking my shirt. And you know what, man? I don't know. Maybe it's water. Maybe it's vodka. I don't know, but it's good.
Before you go for a Coke and a slice, this is Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk here at fantasyalarm.com, and we are going to get you ready for Week 7 of that fantasy football season. And I'll say this, Joey, I'm a little ticked off. Was in a great mood. And then our producer of the stream, John and Pemba, our managing editor here on fantasyalarm.com, asks me if I'm a Jets fan. Who in the hell is a Jets fan? Why would you ask me that? For a background image of the show, that's how you want me represented? A Jet fan? You gotta be kidding me, Joey.
Well, you got kind of a Charlie Brown look on your face right there when you talk fantasy. Yeah, see, there it is. You know, and it's not just the one squiggle of hair on the top there, but you know, just that puppy dog look on your face definitely exudes sad sack Jets fan. But I'll tell you what, you've got hope on the way, an 0-16 season, possibly firing Adam Gase afterwards, and then tanking for Trevor. You might want to tune into the Fantasy Alarm Show on Sirius XM later on tonight, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, where, you know, I might be addressing the future quarterback of the New York Jets.
Yes, and knowing the Jets, they'll screw it up, fire him in a few weeks, and then they'll start winning games because that's how it is being a Jets fan. But speaking of the Jets, they got this game against Buffalo. And right now on fantasyalarm.com, our DFS watch list is out, written by our guy, Howard Bender. Joey Fantasy Alarm with us today, but Howard Bender, he's in his shed. He's busy. He's freaking out. He's making sure he has every piece of news all for you because that's what a family does. Family runs together, stays together, wins together. So with that, though, looking at a couple of players here and looking at this matchup, Jets-Bills. I mean, when it comes to Buffalo, I got to tell you my thoughts on this, and then you can. I'm a little bit worried that Buffalo, who had previously beaten the Jets by 10 points, Buffalo's going to get out to an early lead and then just do clock control the entire way. And it makes me a little bit fearful about the Buffalo side, even though the matchup is good itself.
You know, I can understand that fear, but I mean, look at what they've done with Devin Singletary and Zach Moss. Granted, Moss has been out for a couple of weeks now, but when you're looking at it and you're looking at these teams matched up, Josh Allen needs a comeback game. You know, I mean, he does. I mean, after these last 2 weeks, he hasn't looked good. He knows he hasn't looked good. They've faced tougher defenses. And I think that, you know, coming up this week against the Jets, this is like a slump buster, right? We all know what slump busters are. Yes. This is the Buffalo Bills slump buster this week, right? Like all of a sudden, Josh Allen, he starts throwing all willy-nilly. Beasley gets a touchdown. Diggs maybe gets 2. Allen runs one in. You know, it's like one of those like 38-6 games that, you know, how did the Jets even score 6 points? But it just gets Buffalo like on track to, you know, continue with the rest of the season. So that's kind of where I'm looking at it here. So from a DFS standpoint, I will look to Josh Allen, possibly even in some cash games. And I'll look to Stephon Diggs for sure. In like seasonal leagues, I'll play Cole Beasley if I have to. You know, Jets run defense ranks 14th in DVOA against the run. It always has been, you know, one of their better things. Now, obviously, they just traded away Steve McClendon. I don't really know how much that's going to affect it. But they just don't give the ball to Devin Singletary enough. And mixing in Zach Moss. So, no, I don't worry about them sitting on a lead and just, you know, running the clock out. I see them looking to try and pull some points in there, maybe get a little experimental with some plays and have a little fun. This is a game that they can have a little fun.
Right, and thinking of Devin Singletary, and I've been trying to talk myself out of really taking a shot in the dark with him because on the ground, I feel like I really can't trust him. I don't like relying on running backs to catch passes if they're not going to do anything on the ground. but Devin Singletary had about 5 or 6 catches last game too. And that's something that sticks out to me. And that's something that I'm wondering if I want to go that direction. However, just Devin Singletary,
you don't though, because he'll catch passes when they're in catch-up mode, when they're playing from behind like they were. They're not going to be playing from behind. So really, are you that concerned about the Jets pass rush that, they're going to have a bunch of checkdowns to Singletary or even to Moss? I don't think so, Fensty.
What about Beasley for DFS? You mentioned him for season long because he's pretty cheap when it comes to DFS. And I believe the last time I mentioned him on Fantasy Alarm Sports Talk, my co-host almost hurled on the air. So I have to be careful when mentioning Cole Beasley. So do you think he warrants a better reaction now that we've seen it a little bit more?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, you look at I mean, I had a case of the Beasles last week, and I actually, when somebody asked me if they should start Beasley or John Brown, I was like, you got to go with Beasley here. I mean, who knows what John Brown's situation is, but, I mean, again, you look at the matchups, you look at where they are with the slot receiver, with John Brown not being totally healthy, it does fall to Beasley. So, I'm fine with using him as a low-cost dart throw, salary saver, whatever you want to do. Again, I feel like, this is where the Buffalo passing game gets right, and he's part of it.
Now, you wouldn't think, but the Jets have actually had one, let's just say, one positive thing on their team going for them, and that's Jameson Crowder. And that's where I have to start wondering, especially for DFS as well, when are teams just going to be like, okay, let's put everyone on him and then make anybody else on this pathetic team beat us? Because again, I love Jameson Crowder, was great in the previous matchup, over 100 yards, and he scored, but that was week 1. He's been the guy virtually every week he's been on the field. At some point, opposing defenses are going to have to put a heavier shadow on him.
Yeah, I mean, you think so, but really what it comes down to is that where is Jameson Crowder really getting all of his work? They're a little tougher on him in the first half of the game. In the second half of the game, when teams start going into their prevent defense and they say, all right, we're not going to give up the big play. We're going to give up, the short yardage, and then Crowder can catch some passes on some slants and maybe pick up some extra yardage there. That's where he's really, been most helpful. So I don't think that we ever really have to worry that Crowder is ever going to be shadowed to the point where he's going to be held down. He might not have very many productive weeks ahead of him, but in a PPR format, I'm perfectly fine using him. If, let's say, I'm going to stack Bills against the Jets in DFS, I'll use Crowder as the player coming back, provided that the price tag is still respectable. You might have to pivot to somebody like a Brashad Perriman if he ever gets healthy, or even like a Vincent Smith if he ever comes back. But yeah, Crowder's usually the guy you want coming back against your stack.
What do you think of the prices for him this week? 63 on FanDuel and 59 on DK.
The 59's not bad. Right. I mean, the 63, it's like right around where you see a lot of the guys. I mean, come on. Kenny Golladay was 62 last week on FanDuel. Granted, it was, back coming off of a bye. But, when you got players in that 6 to 6,500 range on FanDuel, there are probably a lot better options to use, once that happens. Like, I mean, A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was like 5,800 on FanDuel last week. They'll bump him up, but what's he going to be? 63, 64?
Yeah, you're going to go after him in that regard then.
Yeah, but I'll take him over Crowder.
Sure. Right. 100% of the time, every time. Another matchup we got here. Let's talk about the Cowboys, because we're talking about pathetic defenses and pathetic teams. Well, here's another one here when it comes to Dallas. And here is the big question I have, not about the Cowboys, but about the Washington football team's offense. Because I want to try to take advantage if I can get some cheap price points out of the deal. And the first player, who is currently my best friend personally in fantasy football, definitely my BFF and that's J.D. Mckissick. He saved my ass last week in about 7 leagues. And I'll take what I can get here. Now, looking at the carry distribution between him and Gibson, it really does make me wonder if there is more in line for this guy than expected. I know I'm relying mostly on passes, and I'm friends with a few of the Washington football team's beat reporters all saying exactly the same thing. With Kyle Allen, Mckissick is going to continue to get targeted. And with the amount of targets he's gotten, I feel he's trustworthy, Howard. I feel he has standalone value.
Why isn't Antonio Gibson getting more work? That's what I want to know. Antonio Gibson was a wide receiver in college. I get maybe he's learning the position a little bit more, but that dude is supposed to be the pass catcher. Like right. McKissick's a journeyman. He's been around the league for a few years now, and and he pops up every so often randomly as this pass catching option. Again, I thought that the game flow, because the Giants and Washington would stay a little closer, that maybe they would give Gibson more of a shot and less on McKissick. And they end up giving McKissick, just as many carries. I think he had like 9 carries to Gibson's 8.
Yeah.
And then he caught a couple of passes. I don't know. Maybe they're disappointed in Gibson. Maybe Gibson is screwing around on pass blocking. So while I love Gibson, I do believe I have Gibson in the watch list. It pains me, Fensty. I can't bring myself to adding McKissick in there just yet. I know that maybe I should. What's his price tag? Oh, it's 5,200 and 4,600.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it's just a little cheaper. That's why I have to bring this up.
I know.
You think I like talking about this team?
I do. You just called them all your BFFs. They're your best buddies. You asked me about starting Kyle Allen, for crying out loud.
Whoa. You asked me about starting Kyle Allen.
No.
You were looking for a quarterback to stream, and you said, oh, Kyle Allen's out there. And that's when I started talking to you about McKissick. And I said to you...
Yeah, I was making a joke, Fensty. Come on.
What is with you messing with me like this today?
You gotta be able to... You gotta read the play, dude.
I can't read the play, dude. You're a thespian. You're an actor. You're a trained actor. And you're damn good at it. What am I supposed to read your mind? I have telekinetic powers just like that? It's like we have ESPN or something like that? I mean, come on, bro. I don't know when you're serious. You've been playing this game all my life, I feel like, in the 8 years I've known you. I never know when you're serious or not.
Good. Like to keep you on your toes.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Now you know why I don't have hair on my head. Thanks a lot.
No problem. Don't worry. You know what? In the DFS podcast later on, the NFL DFS podcast, guaranteed Mpemba brings up Kyle Allen to me again. He did last week, too. He's like, oh, I don't know, man. That price tag, I mean, it's like 5,100. That's, it's like free.
You know what?
Don't worry. That'll come up again.
If he did bring it up, you know what that would
be? Can the public hear John when he comes out and like starts talking to us, or is he just yammering in my ear right now?
I mean, he just did, Howard, so I'm not sure about that. So it just happened. But hopefully the public heard. Otherwise, it would have been a very, very awkward pause. And if that's the case, we're sorry.
Nothing worse than a producer popping the mic when he's not supposed to, right?
Ooh.
Terrible. Terrible.
Uh-oh. Yikes. Instead, let's talk about someone that's not yikes. Terry Mclaurin in this matchup.
That I like. This I like. Very much so.
You going all the way? All your lineups with him?
Terry is on the cover of the DFS watch list this week. I mean, let's face it. This matchup is super juicy. Right? The secondary that he's facing is absolutely atrocious. I mean, it's atrocious. I'm looking for his price tag here. $5,800 on DraftKings.
Amazing price for him.
I love that. I'll take that on DraftKings. The $7,100 on FanDuel's a little pricey for me. I don't really dig that, but man, I'll tell you, going up against Dallas, I don't care who the quarterback is, nobody can cover Mclaurin. Nobody.
No. And that's why, again, I mean, I love this guy, but I'm just shocked with the low price point. This is just another situation where when you look at this offense as a whole, who's the one constant? Who is probably Bob Lung's favorite offensive weapon because of that consistency? It's Terry Mclaurin. And I'll take 5,800 all day. And that's where I got to stop and ask you this. For those that maybe are just getting in and dabbling in DFS for the first time, what do you like playing better on, FanDuel or DraftKings? Because I really go DraftKings for the most part.
I mean, it depends, actually. You know what? I mean, the last couple of weeks, I've been killing it on the cash games on FanDuel because of the way their pricing has been structured. Like all of a sudden you get all these meaty, juicy receivers with great matchups where you don't have to pay up for the Devontae Adams or the Tyreek Hills. Like you could sit there and like float around in that like early, low 6,000 range and start grabbing guys like that. So, I mean, it really depends on where you feel most comfortable. I play on both. Obviously, I do it for work purposes that I have to play on both, and it fluctuates for me. It really does. Some of the things that, DraftKings pricing gets a little crazy at times, and they price up guys so badly that it really forces you into, like, I think DraftKings is probably better for GPP tournaments because it forces you to use more of these like under $5,000 players,
Right.
if you want to use some of the chalk. On FanDuel, you could actually get away with mid-tier pricing on a lot of guys in cash games, and then not worry about that. And then all of a sudden, you don't have to worry about digging for all of these bargains in GPP. So it's really kind of just it's a matter of what the week is like and cash versus GPP.
Yeah, I mean, and that's really what it is. I play maybe one lineup on FanDuel. I play about 3 or 4 on average on DraftKings. Again, I just like it better, and I like the full PPR as well. Hence, there you go with the consistency again. JD McKissick saving me in those contests as well.
Mckissick.
All right, I'll stop talking about him. I was going to ask about one more player. Maybe this doesn't phase you at all, but Logan Thomas with the tight end. It's when can we trust the tight end and not be too reliant on the touchdown when we're spending down for a tight end? And I saw that he's dealing with a little bit of a neck issue, which kind of sucks because I actually just picked him up in a few season-long leagues as well to bail me out for 1 week. So when it comes to Logan Thomas, if this issue does not escalate, is this someone, if you're looking to be cheap, to go after, or is he just too gross and disgusting?
I mean, have you ever seen somebody do so little with the targets that he gets? It's like, and they've pulled back on the targets for him in the last three games. He's only seen 4 targets in the end zone once, and that was this past week. But I mean, look at his game log. His game log's atrocious. I can't even look at his game log. I have to close out that window because that's just. I mean, that game log is terrible. But you know what? I mean, listen, the tight end position is trashy as all hell right now. If you don't have one of the top guys, and Ronas and I talk about this all the time on the Ante Up podcast, which you can like and subscribe to on Spotify and iTunes. But we talk about how bad this position is, that if you don't have Kelsey, Kittle, Waller, or Andrews, then just stream this crap in. Like, really, I mean, maybe Hunter Henry is like a borderline guy. Jonnu Smith, you got a Jonnu. Maybe that is a guy who you'll just leave in, weekly rather than stream. I'm fine with those two. But I mean, I got all these people who are like, oh, I need a tight end for this week, and who should I do? And who should I just find out who's got the best matchup, who looks like, the game flow is going to tilt that way, and go from there. Like, Dalton Schultz this week. I don't like Dalton Schultz on the overall, but if anything that we learned from what we saw in Dallas this past week is that the offensive line is terrible. It's going to be even worse without Zach Martin, which means that they're going to have to rely on the short, quick passes because just doesn't have enough time to allow the receivers to run their routes. So I think what they need to do is just shorten up the passing game, and that's going to favor a guy like Dalton Schultz, who is the worst in coverage against the tight end.
Yeah, I mean, and when it comes to Dalton Schultz, I mean, looking at the targets again, and this is where we focus on targets, not necessarily on touchdowns here. I'm cool with that. Yeah, against the Giants, only had a few, but then you have a 5 in there, a 6, 8, a 10. I mean, he was involved. I thought that he had, after a few weeks ago, I thought he had some long-term appeal. Now I'm kind of in Band-Aid mode with him. But this team sucks, and they're going to have to throw. And if Andy Dalton, like you're saying, is not going to have that much time, short dump-off passes to this guy, that's going to be the ticket to success. and they're going to have to play the short game, kind of like all of you who are under 500 in your season-long leagues right now. Don't think about it 5 weeks from now. Think about getting through this week. We'll help you get there. Talking about another matchup, by the way, some of these Vegas totals,
Can you hear me right now? Can you see me? Because my computer's doing all sorts of weird stuff.
You're so beautiful with your.
All right, I'm just checking.
I got you.
I'm just checking, man. I'm just checking. I'm not gonna screw around with the with Skype, but yeah. All right, good. I'm just making sure. Just making sure. Again, Fensty, there's a lot of construction going on behind me here with the new studio. That all of a sudden, like, I guess our internet is kicking in and out, and somebody keeps.
Who's better at dealing with tech issues than us? Come on, we're pros at it. Seriously, come on. Brutal. Over the last 3-4 years, come on, man.
Brutal. Okay, I'm just making sure that I'm still here for you.
No, I got you. You're always here, and that's what the family does. They're always here for you, whether it's on chats and all the content that you can get. And by the way, scary good deal right now on the site. Ooh, Halloween, 30% off all sports packages right now. Any sports package, 30% off. Promo code SCARY, SCARY. I was always told you should spell out promo codes just in case people aren't great with spelling, just making sure there. That right there is
which amazes me that we went with scary, where people probably throw an E in there at the end, as opposed to like spooky.
I didn't want to say it, but you said it.
or ghost or pumpkin.
Ghost, G-O-S-T, ghost.
G-O-A-S-T, ghost. Right, sounds like roast. Why does it spelled the same way?
Ghost. Can I have a language of origin, please?
Can you use it in a sentence?
Yes. Oh, wow. That's right. Howard, you are not ghosting me right now on this live stream. There you go. I kind of used it in a different way. Instead, let's talk about one more matchup here, and that's the Falcons. Anytime the Falcons are on the board, I salivate at the mouth. I love attacking the Falcons. It's so much fun. But now it's even more fun because I stayed patient, unlike some of our audience who decided to either bench Julio Jones or drop Matt Ryan. There were a lot of you last week. You didn't maintain that patience level. This team's going to have to throw. And now with a 56 total, they go up against Detroit. And this is one of those games where you're going to want some exposure. And this is where I'm going to start the conversation on a very sour note. I was talking to Ronas about this, and Ronas is like, drop Marvin Jones. It all depends on your situation. But he's like, you can drop Marvin Jones, this and that. And I said, Ronas, if there's any matchup in this entire universe that he could somehow find a way to come through, it really has to be this matchup. And I can't quit him yet. Now, when it comes to DFS, he's going to be on my mind. And that makes me want to ask where you stand on Marvin Jones, because it's been brutal, but this is a strong matchup.
I thought he was due for a good matchup this past week against the Jaguars also. I just wrote in my article in the New York Post. It was on Tuesday's episode. All of a sudden we're looking at a lot of these, 30 and over players, and they're really all starting to fall off a cliff. Marvin Jones, T.Y. Hilton, Julian Edelman. I mean, all of a sudden these guys are not being utilized the way they once were, and they're having a lot of problems. So, I mean, yeah, listen, will I give Marvin Jones a look in a stack against the Falcons? Sure. I mean, I would, but it's not going to be my primary lineup. I can't do it. I can't bring myself to, throwing him in there again. I did it last week in a couple of lineups, and I even used him as like a flex play on DraftKings, thinking, all right, because like Marvin Jones, like every year, right? Doesn't he give you like that 2 or 3 touchdown game? And you're like, yeah, unbelievable. I can't believe I had it. And I was kind of thinking that maybe that was next week. I don't know. Maybe it's this week, but I can't sit and rely on it. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, and you're Marvin freaking Jones, and get the hell off my roster.
It's bad. It's just really bad. So let's talk about some of the other options you can rely on from this Detroit squad. Is this a suggested stack going up against this amazing Falcons squad?
I don't know. I mean, here's the problem, right? it's not a great. I mean, it's a fine matchup for Hawkinson, but they don't really utilize him all that much, right? He doesn't really see the targets that you'd like to see for him. Now, granted, maybe he scores a touchdown again because Atlanta continuously gives up the touchdowns. You go Kenny Golladay, but I mean, are we able to rely on DeAndre Swift? I don't think so. I mean, you can't. As far as consistency goes, shout out to Bob. What's up, Bob Long? But as far as consistency goes, how are we not to expect that Adrian Peterson will get that work again, and they'll sprinkle in DeAndre Swift? I worry about, chasing the points of Swift. So if I'm stacking in DFS and it's Lions, it'll probably be Golladay and Hawkinson, but I'm not going to be a huge fan of it.
I'm so glad you said that. Now I'm going to spend the next 30 seconds just mentioning this. Everybody is all of a sudden like, it's Swift's backfield. It's his. Adrian Peterson, who cares? He scored. He's still getting carries. He doesn't exist. He's taking over starting this matchup and beyond. Let's pump the brakes. Adrian Peterson is still there. Maybe in a few weeks from now, but we're talking about right now. And what we haven't seen was this type of performance. Yeah, week one, we saw what we saw week one. But I want to see a little bit more. I want to see those carries like a seesaw go in his favor before we are giving him the keys to the city. And that's where I feel like with recency bias, while a lot of us are playing week to week at this point, we got to slow our rolls a little bit when it comes to expectations of certain guys.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, it's not about chasing last week's points. It's about looking forward and finding out who is this week's DeAndre Swift, right? I mean, we've talked about it. John and I talked about it in the on the Fantasy Alarm Show yesterday a little bit. I've talked about it with Adam Ronis on the Ante Up podcast. It's, you look ahead and you say, okay, Jacksonville. Swift did it against Jacksonville last week. Detroit coming off a bye. You've got that veteran in Adrian Peterson, but you need to get the rookie going and see what he's going to do. So now we kind of look at it with like the Chargers this week. You've got Justin Jackson. You've got Joshua Kelly, in there. Are the Chargers going to continue with that even split? Is there a reason? Is there any way that Anthony Lynn turns around and says, hey, listen, Justin Jackson, he's fine. We've seen what he can do. But do we give Joshua Kelly that extra look because it's a soft matchup against the Jaguars, and we really need to see what this kid's made out of, and we also need to give him a confidence booster because the fumbling that's taken place early on in the season, you don't want that sitting in the kid's head the entire time. If you do, then you're ruining him. Now, I get it. The Chargers want to compete, but, I mean, you really need to give this kid a better look and maybe give him the rock a few extra times. Let him hold on to the ball, let him experience some success and make that happen. And then all of a sudden is Joshua Kelly this week's DeAndre Swift?
Yeah, and that leads me to two of the tougher decisions that I have in lieu of the watch list as well. And that's choosing between those two, where I lean more towards Jackson's side of it. I get your mindset regarding Kelly. You want him to stop thinking about that and sweating over the fumbles. We were saying the same thing about Swift after the first week when he dropped that what should have been a touchdown pass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with that totally makes sense. I'm leaning more towards Jackson. Still a very tough decision. However, the other tough decision, how do you decide between Calvin Ridley and Julio Jones, especially if Julio's a little bit cheaper? That to me is something that's very, very difficult to decide.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, once Julio's in there, Julio automatically draws the heavier coverage. I mean, that's the way it goes. He is the team's number one, and we saw that happen. Now, when I was looking at the matchup this week and, and putting, Atlanta up against, Detroit and looking at, the way the secondary is and who gets covered better, who get a little tighter. And you're going to see a lot of, Okudah on Ridley this week. And so I kind of, I look at, and I guess maybe it's, it's just that game theory kind of thing. Like you're looking at Jackson this week. So is everybody else who's looking at Jackson. So the contrarian play is Joshua Kelly. So now the question is, well, Julio's back, 2 touchdowns, blah, blah, blah. He's the number one. He's the the big guy there, that's where the chalk is going to end up being. So then all of a sudden, Ridley slightly becomes a little bit more contrarian. People are like, well, I don't have to pay as much for Julio, and he's back, and we know that Ryan looks for him. So maybe that's really kind of the way it looks for me, going on that opposite side of where everybody else is going.
Ridley, 8,400, 7,300. The difference is on the sites, 84 on FanDuel, 7,300 on DraftKings. You can catch Joey Fantasy Alarm's twin brother, Howard Bender, on Fantasy Alarm, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Yours truly and Adam Ronis, 1 to 3 a.m. Eastern on Alarm After Hours. Going to get you ready for Week 7 and also cover what's gone on thus far in this crazy, wild fantasy football season. But hey, everything that we told you to expect, it's happening, and that is why you hang with us, your family, because that's what families do. We stick together, we win together like we always do. We always dominate. No other option.